Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. I was sitting in the emergency room of the city clinic, torn between staying and leaving. Part of me yearned to flee, to leave the cheating woman behind, wondering where I'd vanished to. Yet I knew I had to confront her one final time. But let's backtrack a bit. My name is Donnie Walker. I work as a CPA at the accounting firm of Thomas and McMahon. I've been married to Sharon for almost 5 years, although that was about to change. After high school, I enlisted in the Marine Corps as a dispersing clerk. My job was to ensure our Marines got paid. It wasn't glamorous or exciting, but I loved working with numbers. Liars can figure, but figures don't lie. I found satisfaction in that aspect of my work. When my time in the court ended, I joined the reserves and completed my bachelor's degree in accounting. I'd started my education during my service, so it only took 3 years to finish and meet the state requirements for a CPA license. I met Sharon during my senior year of college. She was studying to become a paralegal, with hopes of becoming a lawyer eventually. We met, dated, and married the September after graduating from college. I began working at Thomas and McMahon, while she joined the law firm of Jackson and Associates, specializing in family law. Things seemed perfect for the first 4 years, or so I thought. Sharon understood my reserve commitments, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year, and she was fine with it. Luckily, I never got deployed overseas during my time in the reserves, but there was always that possibility. Our life together during that period was amazing. We were deeply in love with each other, enjoying our cozy apartment and dreaming of buying a house and starting a family. Things started to unravel after our 4th wedding anniversary. Sharon began going out on Fridays after work with her friends to relax, or so she said. I didn't pay much attention initially, as I also occasionally spent time golfing with coworkers. Initially, she would return home by 7:30 or 8 o'clock p.m., but over time, her returns grew later and later. Once, she didn't return until 7 o'clock the following day, claiming she stayed at a friend's place rather than drive home drunk. A call to her friend confirmed her story, and we retrieved her car from the bar. Though I couldn't prove otherwise, I was understandably upset. I told Sharon if it happened again, she should call me for a ride home. Sure, whatever, she replied dismissively. That marked the beginning of the end for us. Sharon became increasingly dismissive and disrespectful, insisting I had no right to question her activities outside of work or home. While I understood I didn't own her, I believed that if she truly cared about me, she'd at least keep me informed so I wouldn't worry. I began to notice some unsettling patterns in Sharon's behavior. When she returned from her outings, her clothing, or what was left of it, often looked disheveled. There was a distinct smell of cologne and something else clinging to her. She'd rush into the shower as soon as she got home, claiming tiredness as an excuse to avoid spending time with me. As a CPA, managing our finances fell on my shoulders. We both had our paychecks deposited directly into our checking accounts, with 10% allocated to savings for future investments like a house. Initially, everything was routine, but over time, I observed changes in Sharon's spending habits. She started purchasing alluring lingerie from Victoria's Secret and clubwear from online retailers, but she was secretive about it. When I inquired, she brushed off my questions with a haughty attitude, asserting it was none of my concern. It's fine if you want to buy nice things, I told her, but why the secrecy? I haven't seen any of it. What are you doing with these purchases? It's none of your business, she retorted. None of my business. That didn't sit well with me. On the 4th anniversary of her employment, I noticed her salary remained stagnant. When I confronted her, she dismissed it, claiming there were no raises due to slow business. No raises, she insisted. Things have been slow. I knew that was a lie. Our firm handled year-end audits for several companies, including Jackson and Associates, and I was aware of their increased revenues. I decided to investigate further when I got to work. Then came the end-of-year holiday party at her workplace. I always referred to it as Christmas, but her company decided to go the politically correct route and call it a holiday party instead. Whatever. Initially, Sharon tried to talk me out of attending, which set off warning bells. I know you don't enjoy being around my coworkers, so why not just stay home this year? She suggested. You really don't want to be around a bunch of stuffy old lawyers. Maybe I just want to spend the evening with you, I replied. She sighed and shrugged. Well, okay, if you insist, she relented. But I plan to socialize with my colleagues, and I can't have you clinging to me all night. What? What do you mean, socialize with your colleagues? I asked. Don't you see them every day at work and during your evenings out? Well, I might get asked to dance with some of them, she explained. Okay, I said. Do you have room on your dance card for your husband? She rolled her eyes and sighed again. I guess I can fit you in somewhere, she said. Well, don't go out of your way, I replied. We attended the party, and I hardly saw her the entire evening. She introduced me to a few of her coworkers as her pencil-pushing ball and chain, and dashed off to dance with one man after another. Her coworkers looked at me with pity, and hardly anyone spoke to me. I never got a chance to dance with her, and I noticed that she left the party more than once, returning after a while with some guy. If I didn't know any better, I could have sworn she was involved with one or more of them. Okay, I'm ready to go, she finally slurred, her words muddled. Clearly, she had had a few too many drinks, her clothing and makeup disheveled. I grunted and made my way to the car. She followed, attempting to kiss me when she got in, but I gently pushed her away, noticing the unpleasant odor of her breath. What's wrong? She asked. Your breath stinks, I replied. What have you been drinking? She giggled. Wouldn't you like to know? She teased. I couldn't help but notice that you didn't even spare a dance for your husband, but spent the whole night with everyone else, I pointed out. Yeah, so what? She retorted, growing irritated. I also noticed you were frequently absent, I continued. Where did you disappear to? She laughed. That's none of your business, she dismissed. We remained silent for the rest of the trip home. Naturally, nothing happened between us that night. Sharon attempted to make amends for her behavior during the rest of the holiday, but I could sense things weren't the same as they used to be. After the holiday season, Sharon went back to being a bitch. Our married life went from several times a week to maybe once a week. If that, she was spending more and more time with the girls, and her attitude towards me was only getting worse. A couple of weeks after the holiday party, I had a conversation with Hubert Scott, the accountant in charge of the annual review at Jackson and Associates. I learned that everyone in the firm had received a significant bonus and a substantial pay increase. For instance, Sharon had received a 30% salary hike and a $10,000 bonus. However, none of that money had been deposited into our account. What on earth was she doing with it? I considered asking her directly, but I decided against it. Given her attitude, I figured she would just lie and turn it into an argument. So instead, I asked Hubert to look into it and promised to get back to me. He assured me he would and asked for a couple of days. 2 days later, things took a turn for the worse. Hubert came by my office and shared some of his findings. According to the records from their firm, Sharon had her increase automatically deposited into an account she had set up with another bank. It hit me then that she was apparently planning to leave me. Additionally, Hubert mentioned they had found some irregularities in the company's books that could spell trouble. I made a mental note of the account information and thanked Hubert for his efforts. That afternoon, my phone buzzed, indicating I had received an email in my personal account. The subject line read, "What your wife is doing behind your back." Upon opening it, I found a video attached. That video marked the end of my marriage. The video was of my wife with a guy from the party. I don't think I need to explain what they were doing. They kept saying insulting things about me and calling me a wuss. Needless to say, I was furious after watching that video. I halted the video, unable to bear anymore. Glancing at the email, I sought the sender, hoping against hope it was some twisted prank. I shot back a reply. Who are you and when did this happen? A few minutes later, a response landed in my inbox. I'm Tiffany Hall, the wife of the guy in the video, and I know your wife. This went down yesterday. Do you want to meet? If so, call me at this number. Of course, I was eager to meet. My mind buzzed with a million questions. How long had this affair been happening? This video shed light on so much of the tension between us over the past few months. I scribbled down her number and dialed. Hello, a voice answered. Is this Mr. Walker? Yes, I replied. Please call me Dunny. Is this Tiffany? I asked. It is, she confirmed. I assume you've seen the video. Bits of it, I admitted. I want to meet and get to the bottom of this. All right, she agreed. Let's meet at the Starbucks around the corner from your office. 20 minutes. I'll be there, I assured her before ending the call. I shut down my workstation, informing my secretary that I'd be out for a while. It only took me 10 minutes to reach Starbucks, so I ordered a coffee and waited. Shortly after, an attractive woman walked in. She scanned the shop, and when our eyes met, she approached. I invited her to sit, offering to buy her a coffee after we introduced ourselves. After getting her order, she retrieved a manila envelope from her large handbag and handed it to me. Here's everything you need to know, she said, gesturing toward the contents. Peering inside, I found photographs alongside a report compiled by a private investigator and a flash drive. The drive holds videos, additional photos, and a digital version of the report. I'm sorry you had to find out about their affair like this. How long has this been happening? I asked, my heart sinking. At least 4 months from what I've gathered, she replied. Possibly longer. She's been involved with others at her firm too. It's all in the report. Just out of curiosity, why are you telling me all of this? I inquired. Because I plan to name your wife in my divorce, and that impacts you, she explained. Plus, I thought you should know, in case you hadn't already figured it out. I've had my suspicions for a while, but I lacked concrete proof, I admitted. So, what's your next move? I'd already made it clear to Gerald that if I caught him cheating again, I'd divorce him, she revealed. Like you, I've suspected for some time, but without evidence. I caught him once before, but he warned me that if I left, his firm would ruin me. You're familiar with their reputation, right? I've heard Sharon talk about how they tend to destroy spouses they go up against, I said. Their motto is, win, no matter what, she declared, by any means necessary. So you're going through with it this time, I remarked. She nodded firmly. I am, she affirmed. Now that I have concrete evidence of his infidelity, I nodded in understanding. So what do you need from me? I inquired. Nothing, she replied. I just want to do what's right. Not even a bit of revenge. I probed. Nope, she said, shaking her head. No offense. You're a great guy, but I won't risk messing this up until it's done. I nodded in agreement. No offense taken, I assured her. I completely understand. In fact, she added, I think it's best if we don't see or talk to each other until it's all over. That makes sense, I conceded. Thank you for sharing this with me. As she prepared to leave, I stood up. You're welcome, Donnie. Again, I'm sorry, she apologized. She reached into her purse and handed me a business card. This is my attorney's information. She's a real shark, and she's expecting your call. I accepted the card with gratitude. Considering all she had revealed, I was eager to see what was on the flash drive. I called the office, took the afternoon off, then headed home. Upon arriving, I went straight to my personal computer and inserted the flash drive. On it were several videos of Sharon with various men, including Gerald Hall. Some of the footage showed her with Gerald and at least one other man. One scene in one video made me feel bad. Gerald and my soon-to-be ex-wife were in the room. Gerald was laughing and my wife was telling him how much she enjoyed giving me horns in front of everyone, and that if I went against it and tried to do something about it, my reputation would suffer greatly. I couldn't fathom that this was the woman I once loved. Unbeknownst to her, she had just ignited a battle, and I vowed to give her a fight she wouldn't even comprehend. After reading the private investigator's report, it became clear that Sharon regularly renders vows with her lovers, often at the downtown Marriott Hotel, at least once a week. Additionally, they always spent at least one weekend a month together. Last month's report revealed that Gerald had spent an entire weekend with Sharon at my own home. Glancing at my schedule, I realized those were the weekends I was on reserve drill duty. With some time before Sharon's return, I checked my watch and decided to act. I pulled out the card Tiffany had given me and dialed the number. "Law offices of Rebecca Taylor," the receptionist answered. I introduced myself and scheduled an appointment to see Rebecca the following morning. After that call, I logged into our bank account and began the familiar ritual of preparing for divorce. I paid off and canceled our joint credit cards, then opened a new account in my name only. Half of our money was swiftly transferred into that account. I headed to my gun safe and retrieved my .45 caliber M1911, still securely holstered. After grabbing a fully loaded magazine, I inserted it into the pistol grip and fastened the holster to my belt. Living in a state that mandates a permit for carrying a pistol, I made sure mine was up to date. Although I also possessed a concealed carry permit, I rarely utilized it. However, after overhearing Sharon with her despicable lover, I wasn't willing to take any unnecessary risks. Entering what was once our bedroom, I collected a suitcase and an overnight bag. Her clothes were carelessly tossed into the suitcase, and her toiletries were packed into the overnight bag. I didn't bother with any precision in packing her things, setting the luggage by the door without much thought. As I sat at my computer, Sharon arrived home. I activated the camera on my phone, always kept conveniently in my shirt pocket. The phone was tall enough that its camera lens peeked out over my pocket. She appeared surprised to find me home before her. "Donnie, what are you doing home so early?" she inquired, entering the bedroom, which now served as my office space. "I had some things to take care of," I replied casually, and then her gaze fell upon the pistol on my hip. "Why are you wearing that?" she inquired. "For self-protection," I stated. "By the way, I have something to show you." "Oh," she responded. "What is it?" "Come over here, you'll find it quite interesting," I invited. As she approached and stood beside me, I pulled up a video file on the computer and played it for her. Her eyes widened as she watched herself with the two men. "Well," she sighed, "I suppose you've caught me." "I guess so," I replied. I was a bit taken aback by her lack of remorse. I had hoped for an apology or at least a hint of regret, but there was none. If anything, she seemed more arrogant and dismissive than usual. "Now that you know, there's no need for secrecy," she declared. "I'll be bringing Gerald by the house from time to time. And yes, he'll be staying the night. In my bed. It's a shame, really. I had hoped to keep this from you a bit longer, but I see no point in waiting." "You're out of your mind, Sharon," I snapped. My tone was sharper than she'd ever heard from me, and she visibly recoiled. "In fact, you're going to pack your things and leave right now." "What are you going to file for divorce?" she retorted. "Because if you do, it'll be the biggest mistake of your life." "Really?" I challenged. "Why? Are you and your cronies going to concoct more lies about me like you did with the others?" "So that's your plan?" I asked, "to force me into being your cuckold by fabricating lies you know are false?" "Why not?" she retorted. "We've done it before. I'll leave for now, but you better think long and hard. You have 48 hours to reconsider. Either comply or face public humiliation." "Wait," I said, reaching for her hand. "What?" she questioned. I swiftly removed her rings and snatched her keys from her purse. "What are you doing?" she demanded as I extracted the house key. I tossed her purse back to her. "Get out," I commanded. I've already packed some of your belongings. Now go." She glanced at the luggage by the door and then back at me. "Come on, Donnie. Don't do this," she pleaded. "Out," I insisted. She picked up the luggage and left. I stopped the video on my phone and reviewed it to ensure I captured the entire confrontation. I had. Good. I would make sure Rebecca saw this tomorrow. I sent the video to my email so I could access it on my PC. From there, I forwarded it to her parents, her sister, and my own parents. I wanted them all to witness what Sharon had become, and I refused to let her portray me as the villain in this situation. The rest of the night was spent drinking beer and watching TV. After a somewhat restless night, I called into work and took a couple of vacation days. I explained the situation to my boss, and he completely understood. "Just take care of what you need to and come back as soon as you can," he advised. "Thanks, boss," I said, ending the call. After a shower, I dressed and prepared to meet Rebecca, ensuring I had everything I needed. Rebecca's no-nonsense demeanor impressed me. She examined everything I had brought and simply shook her head. "Donnie, this is unbelievable," she remarked. "I've heard rumors about Jackson and Associates for years, but I never had anything concrete. If what she's saying is true, we're looking at serious criminal charges." "So what's our move?" I asked. "Well, I'll file for divorce on the grounds of adultery and push for a 70-30 split with no support. We'll give her the standard 30 days to respond, during which we'll demand a full financial report. Meanwhile, I'll work on obtaining a subpoena for her banking records. If she attempts to conceal accounts, we can consider charges of perjury. Considering her threats in the video, I'll also pursue a restraining order covering you, your home, and your workplace," she added. "As for the other matters, I'll contact the state bar and the local DA. This appears to be extortion. We'll see where that leads. Meanwhile, you keep your distance. No confrontations, no communication with her or her associates." "Understand," she instructed. I nodded in agreement. "Got it," I affirmed. "Good," she replied. "I'll start the paperwork and have her served at her workplace within the next day or two. You can reach me on my personal cell if needed, but don't overdo it." She handed me her card. "Thanks, Rebecca," I said, shaking her hand. That day, I received 3 phone calls. The first was from my mother. "Donnie, I'm so sorry about all this. Are you all right?" she asked when I picked up. "I will be, Mom." "Thanks," I assured her. "I saw a lawyer today, and she's handling it." "Well, you let us know if there's anything you need, Donnie," she said. "We love you." "I love you too, Mom," I replied. The next call was from Sharon's parents, who seemed to have difficulty grasping the situation. "Donnie, what the hell is this?" her father demanded. "What did you do?" "What did I do?" I exclaimed. "Besides loving Sharon with all my heart, nothing." "Did you hear what she said?" "Yeah, I heard it," her father acknowledged. "But I can't believe she'd do something like that without provocation. Can't you just work through this?" "No, Dad, I can't," I stated firmly. "I've already consulted a lawyer, and I'm filing for divorce." "I'm sorry, son," he finally said. "This just doesn't make sense to me." Her sister also called, and she was furious. "What the hell is going on, Donnie?" she demanded. "What did you do?" "I didn't do a damn thing," I retorted. "It's your sister who's lost it, not me." "I don't believe it," she insisted. "My sister would never do something like this." "Believe what you want. I don't care," I snapped. "I'm just informing you why I'm divorcing her. You can take it up with her." With that, I ended the call, seething. I fired up my computer and checked my email. In my inbox was a message with the subject, "I know what you've done." The sender was from Sharon's firm. The email looked suspicious, like one of those fake messages that end up in the spam folder. "I know what you have been doing, and I have video footage of you doing illegal acts to minors." The letter read, You have a 24-hour window to halt any divorce proceedings, and our records will be purged upon receipt of a cashier's check for $100,000. Failure to comply will result in the dissemination of said records to authorities, your family, your Marine Corps Reserve superiors, and your workplace. If you accept, respond with agree to delay further action. The email was unsigned, and despite scrutinizing the header, I found no clues. It wasn't my forte, so I called Julian Baker, our company's security expert. "Julian, I need a favor," I said. "Sure thing, Dunny," he replied. "What's going on?" "It's sensitive," I cautioned. "Can you keep it confidential?" "For you always," Julian assured. "I received an email that seems to be from my wife's law firm, but I'm not certain," I explained. "Could you take a look and let me know?" "Of course," Julian agreed. "Forward it to me. I'll check it out." "Thanks," I said, ending the call and sending the email to Julian. The wait felt interminable. About 30 minutes later, Julian called back. "What did you find?" I asked anxiously. "Well," Julian began, "it definitely originated from Jackson and Associates Network. They didn't even bother masking it or using proxies. Talk about arrogant. Can you verify that?" I inquired. "Absolutely," he affirmed. "I can even identify the author." "Would you be willing to testify to that in court?" I asked. "Sure, if it comes to that," he replied. "Thanks, I owe you big time," I expressed. "I'll inform my attorney. She might want to speak with you." "No problem," he responded. "Just give her my number." After ending the call, I immediately dialed Rebecca. She picked up on the second ring. "Rebecca Taylor," she answered. "Rebecca, it's Donnie Walker. I received an email that seems like blackmail," I informed her. "Our security guide looked into it, and he says it came from Jackson and Associates Network." "Really?" she inquired. "All right. I'm working on your petition now and getting the restraining order. Forward that email to me along with your 8 guys' contact info. We'll handle this. Don't respond or take any action." "Okay," I agreed. "Thanks." Ending the call, I sent Rebecca the requested information and then cracked open a beer. I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. I found out later that evening. Around 9:30, Tiffany called. "Donnie, are you watching the news?" she asked. "No," I replied. "Why?" "Switch to Channel 7 right now," she urged. Channel 7 was a local news channel, which I rarely watched. I switched the channel. On Eyewitness News, it's been reported that a gunman entered the Lamplighter Bar and Grill, resulting in 4 fatalities and 4 serious injuries this evening. According to the news announcer, the gunman used an AR-15 style weapon equipped with a bump stock. Eyewitnesses at the scene reported that the gunman was confronted and shot dead by another patron armed with a pistol. The motive behind the shooting remains unclear, the announcer added. The scene shifted to a reporter interviewing a witness. "It was chaotic," the witness said. "This guy stormed into the bar, went straight to a table where some people were seated, and started accusing them of ruining his life with lies. He was shouting things like, 'You're all going to pay for destroying me with your lies.' Then he pulled out a rifle and started firing. He managed to get off several rounds before another guy shot him in the back with a pistol. Everyone was scrambling to get out." Returning to the news announcer, it was stated, "Names of the victims are being withheld until their next of kin are notified." But police have revealed that they were all employees of the law firm Jackson and Associates. The gunman has been identified as Louis Mitchell, who went through a contentious divorce in which he was accused of misconduct toward minors. It's unclear where he obtained the weapon used in the attack, but there are already calls for stricter gun control measures from activists. Coming up next on Eyewitness News, a heartwarming reunion between a man and his dog. "Damn," I muttered to Tiffany. There was a knock at the door. "I have to go now. Tiffany, someone's at the door." "Same here," she said. "Call me if you find anything out." "I will," I said, ending the call. I stowed my phone and opened the door to find 2 police officers. "Mr. Walker?" one of them asked. "Yes," I replied. "Do you know a Sharon Walker?" he inquired. "Yes, she's my wife, at least for now," I said. "I'm sorry to inform you, sir, but your wife has been seriously injured in a mass shooting and has been taken to Mercy Hospital," the officer said. "How bad is she?" I asked. "I really don't know, sir," he replied. "I suggest you talk to the doctor when you get there." Again, "I'm sorry, sir." With that, they tipped their hats and left. Damn, I wanted that unpleasant woman out of my life, but I didn't want her to die. I called Tiffany back. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear her crying. "Tiffany, it's Donnie," I said. "What happened?" "They just told me Nate, my husband, was shot and killed at the lamplighter," she said. "I'm sorry to hear that, Tiffany," I said. Damn again, I thought. I had hoped the jerk would end up being Bubba's subordinate, and I felt even worse for Tiffany. Sharon was shot too. "I'm heading to the hospital to find out what I can. Is there anything I can do for you?" More sniffling. "No, but thanks for asking anyway," she said. "Please stay in touch and let me know what's going on." "I will," I assured her. We ended the call, and I made my way to the hospital. The place was teeming with police and reporters, while medical staff rushed around tending to patients. Eventually, I found someone who could provide me with an update. Sharon was still in surgery, but I was allowed to wait in the designated area, and they assured me someone would come to update me. Naturally, I had to fill out several forms about Sharon, since she was still covered by my work insurance. She had her own insurance too, so I assumed her treatment would be mostly covered. Here I am at the start of my ordeal, wondering if I should just give up and leave. I called Rebecca to let her know what had happened. She said she would postpone serving Sharon until she recovered from surgery. I called Sharon's parents and sister to inform them of the situation. Naturally, they tried to blame me, but I pointed out that if I were responsible, I'd probably be dead too, and not sitting in the hospital. They arrived and sat across from me in the waiting room, shooting me disdainful glances. Having already grabbed a quick meal in the cafeteria, chicken and mashed potatoes, I had gulped down several cups of bitter coffee and spent hours watching the news. I had dozed off more than once while staring at the television. It was 5 a.m. when a weary-looking doctor approached me in the waiting room. "Mr. Walker?" he asked. I looked up at him, my eyes heavy with fatigue. "Yes," I replied, rubbing my eyes to keep myself awake. Sharon's parents and sister joined us. "Your wife is currently in critical condition, but her status seems stable for now. We'll have more information within the next 24 hours, he explained. "We're optimistic about her survival, but the next day or two will be crucial." "Is she awake?" her father inquired. The doctor shook his head. "No," he said. "She's still under anesthesia. Just to prepare you. There's a possibility she may never walk again and may not fully regain sight in her right eye without further surgery. I'm sorry," he added before walking away. Her father turned to me. "So, are you still planning to divorce her?" he asked. I paused before responding. Part of me considered forgiveness, but the pain of her actions was still fresh. "Yes," I answered. They all looked at me in surprise. "But I'll wait until she's in stable condition." "How can you be so heartless?" her mother asked. "How could she be so heartless?" I countered. "Where will she go? What will she do?" Sharon's mother pressed. "If I'm right, that won't be much of an issue," I replied. "What do you mean?" her father asked. I didn't want to reveal too much or speak out of turn. "We'll see," I said. "I'm going home, but I'll be back." With that, I left them standing there and returned home, where I took a shower and collapsed into bed. The following day, news of the shooting had spread nationwide. Scores of men came forward, revealing they too had been targeted for extortion by the law firm, accused of crimes they never committed. Their stories echoed each other eerily, each receiving threats to expose non-existent heinous acts unless they paid hefty sums. Consequently, many lives were shattered. State authorities intervened, arresting several lawyers from the firm and forcing its closure. A massive class action lawsuit was filed against the firm and its partners, seeking millions in damages in addition to criminal charges. 3 days after the shooting, I received news from the hospital that Sharon had regained consciousness and was asking for me. I promptly informed Rebecca, who arranged for 2 men to meet me there. One of them, she mentioned, was the process server. I called Sharon's parents and learned that one of them had been keeping vigil by her side since her surgery. In the hallway outside Sharon's room, I met the process server and another man, Detective Clark. Together, we entered Sharon's room, where she sat in bed with her mother in a chair nearby, her face filled with questions. "Sharon Walker," the process server inquired. She nodded, and he confirmed her identity before handing her a manila folder. "You've been served," he declared before leaving the room. Detective Clark remained standing, looking down at her with a solemn shake of his head. "Do you understand that extortion and conspiracy to commit extortion are felonies in this state?" Detective Clark questioned. Sharon lowered her gaze, nodding weakly. "Yes," she murmured, her voice trembling. "And you're aware that in this state, each act of extortion carries a penalty of up to 15 years in prison and a $10,000 fine." He pressed. Once more, Sharon nodded. He handed her a printed copy of the email I had received. "Does this ring a bell?" he inquired. Sharon looked defeated. "It should. It was composed and sent from your computer, under your login, along with about 75 others. We found them all in your sent items folder. I'm no mathematician, but 76 times 15 years comes out to about 1,140 years, and you're looking at roughly a $760,000 fine. In short, you're in deep trouble. You know I have to arrest you. The DA is pushing for a life sentence with all the charges against you, but if you cooperate, maybe I can negotiate a deal. What do you say?" Again, Sharon nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "All right," he replied. "I'll give you a few minutes alone with your husband and family, but I'll be back." With that, Detective Clark looked at me, placed a hand on my shoulder, and left the room. I stared down at my soon-to-be ex-wife. Tears streamed down her face. "You really wrote this? To your own husband?" Sharon sobbed even harder. "How could you?" I glanced at her mother. "How do you think Jackson and Associates became so successful?" I posed the question rhetorically. "They did this to a whole bunch of guys looking for a quick buck. That's why that guy went and shot them all. And I have her on video admitting they did this all the time." "No wonder you want to divorce her," her mother said, looking at me. "I don't blame you one bit. That on top of her adultery," I added. "There's no way I want her back, ever." I turned back to Sharon. "You never answered my question." She looked at me, defeated. I got wrapped up in the excitement and the power, I guess, she admitted. As for the letters, well, I was just doing what the lawyers wanted. I hated doing it. And I wasn't the only one. All the paralegals did it as well, please believe me. I was only following orders. "Sorry, but that old excuse just doesn't cut it," I retorted. "At all," I emphasized. "The snide comments, the disrespect, the cheating. No, you loved it. You got off on putting me down. I saw the glee on your face when you told me you do it all the time. I saw how much you enjoyed humiliating me. Oh, he's dead, by the way. No, you just screwed up, and it almost cost you your life. It sure as hell cost you your marriage. I hope it was worth it to you. Can you forgive me?" she pleaded. I shook my head. "No," I said firmly. "Never. I'm just glad we didn't have any kids. By the way, when you fill out that financial statement, don't forget to include your secret account. You know, the one you set up to hide money from me. I'd hate to see you add perjury to your list of crimes." She looked at me, her eyes wide. "You know about that?" she gasped. I nodded. "Of course," I replied. Who you think did the year-end books and audit for your firm? You think you've got problems. That's nothing compared to what we found over the last year. Believe me, the feds are going to have fun with your senior partners. I looked at Sharon one last time. Goodbye, Sharon, I said. I loved you once. With that, I walked out as Detective Clark entered with 2 uniformed officers. Sharon was handcuffed to the bed as her mother watched in tears. Epilogue. Jackson and Associates faced a barrage of charges from state and federal agencies, compounding their legal woes. The class action lawsuit for defamation and other civil wrongs ballooned to include more than 700 men, some of whom had been wrongly imprisoned due to false accusations made by the firm. Eventually, the court ordered the firm and its senior partners to pay over $2.5 billion in fines, fees, and restitution, with the bulk going to attorneys and taxes. All the firm's lawyers were disbarred, their licenses permanently revoked. The handling of divorces by the firm became a subject of heated debate. Some argued for a review of all cases, given the scandal circumstances, while others advocated for a focus only on cases involving the men in the class action. Ultimately, no reviews occurred and no changes were made. The surviving partners received life sentences for their actions. Simon Jackson, the firm's senior partner, committed suicide before his trial concluded. Sharon reached a plea deal, providing evidence for the state. The judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison, with parole eligibility in 10. Upon release, she was a mere shadow of herself, bearing scars, blindness in one eye, and mobility issues from the shooting. She moved in with her parents and relied on welfare after her savings depleted. Last known, she was writing a blog on the perils of infidelity. Sharon's betrayal left me reeling. For a while, I withdrew from the world, cautiously dipping into the dating pool only occasionally. Trust issues loomed large, especially with women. 3 years post-divorce, I met Emily, a former Marine who worked as a dispersing clerk. She was a bit younger than me and had recently lost her husband to a sudden heart attack. We went on several dates before I felt ready to open up about my past marriage. Emily listened attentively as I recounted the painful details. When I finished, she simply nodded. "That makes sense," she said quietly. "I know it wasn't easy for you to share all that, but I'm glad you did. Not all women are like Sharon. Like you, I believe in the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, and if you give me a chance, I'll prove it." And she did, over and over, in myriad ways, and she continues to do so even after all these years. I eventually retired from the reserves as a master surgeon and started collecting my retirement benefits at 55. Emily and I have plans to travel the country in an RV we purchased with some of the money I received from the class action against the firm. As Emily assures me, she intends to make me the happiest man alive. I believe her, and that's all I need. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.